Good morning. Today we are continuing working with our data and we are going to be doing some graphing with the data. Last objective we did mean, median, and mode. That is a power objective. The graphs are just course objectives, but they're still important to know. We will see graphs all the time. It's important to know how to create the graphs. It's important to know how to read different types of graphs. So the rest of this unit, we're going to be learning about different types of graphs that there are, how to read them, how to understand the data that's being given. It's important to understand these because we will see them when it comes to math testing time. You will see them in future classes.
Gregory clears to the office. Gregory clears to the office.
So in today's objective, we're going to learn about interpreting and creating bar graphs and line graphs. So we're going to do two types of graphs today. The first one is the bar graph. And we can see there's a picture of a bar graph here. The definition of a bar graph is it's a type of graph in which the lengths are used to represent and compare data. So the lengths of the bars are used to represent and compare the data. So bar graph focuses on how many of something there is. The x-axis is a thing instead of a number. So instead of being numbers going across the bottom, on this graph we have snow. Sorry, we have months. So going across the bottom, instead of there being numbers like a regular graph when we did the coordinate plane, now we have months going across on this graph. Going up for the y-axis, we see numbers. So here's an example of a bar graph showing the number of days it snowed from December to March. So looking at our graph, can we easily answer these questions?
Yeah.
Because we can look at those lengths of our different bars. So which month had the most days of snow? Amelia? February. We can see just how tall February is. It is the tallest one, so it has the most days of snow. Which month had the fewest? Riziki? December. We can see that's the smallest bar. How many more days did it snow in February than December? James, tell me what math you're doing.
You count, you go what number February is, which is 14.
Yep, February had 14.
And then you minus what number December is, and that's 2 to get 12.
So we took February, we subtracted out December, and we get 12. It snowed 12 more days in February. How many fewer days did it snow in March than January? Aiden H., what math are you doing?
I'm doing so January and it's 6, and March is in the middle of 2 and 4, so it's 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then you subtract 3 out of 6, and you're stuck in the to 3 days.
So we had January had 6, March had 3, we subtract them, and we see that there are 3 fewer days than what January had. March had 3 fewer. It's the same idea of what we're doing when we say more than or less than, we're still subtracting. So either way we say it, we're doing the same math, but we're understanding this answer has to do with the lower number, this answer had to do with the higher. It had 12 more days, and it had 3 fewer days, days of snow. Does that make sense? All right, so here's what we're going to do together for this bottom part. We have to do part of it together, and then you're going to do it on your own. You're going to actually create your graph. We talked when we did our math packet pages about when we make graphs, we have to have correct labels. So what does that mean? That means when you make your graph, we have to have correct labels on the side, on the bottom, and a title for it. So let's see what that's going to look like. It says collect data from your classmates and create a bar graph showing how many students have a birthday in each month of the year. So what's the first thing we're going to do? Before we can even make a graph, what do we have to do, James?
We have to label it.
Before I make the graph, what should be the first thing I'm gonna do? Logan? We have to collect our information. We have to get our data. So we're doing this for our class. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna say, all right, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. I'm making my table. So you should be making a table because we are all using the same information. So, raise your hand if you have a birthday in January. So I see 1, 2 hands up. Raise your hand if you have a birthday in February. Enzo, do you have a birthday in January? Okay, so we have 3 for January. Raise your hand if you have a birthday in February. Is it just me and JT? So that's 2 of us. Raise your hand if you have a birthday in March. Just 1. Raise your hand if, did somebody say 2? No, okay. Raise your hand if you have a birthday in April. 1, 2, 3. May. 1. June. July. 1, 2, 3. August. 2. September. 1. October. 1. November. 2. December. 2. I'm sorry, which one? All right, so 3 in November, 2 in December. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Because there are 21 in the class plus the teacher. So there are 22 of us in here total that we were graphing. So now that we've all collected our data, and I should see that data table in everybody's binder up on top like I did, because we need space to graph, I should see the data table like I made. So up here, do the data table in this. So everybody should have our data up here. Why did I say we had to collect the data before we could start making the graph? What important information did we get out of that, Luciana?
You have to know like the numbers.
Yeah, we need to know how to number the side, because am I going up by 1s? Do I have to skip by 5s? How am I going to number my sides? So now that I have my data table, what is it that I collected data on? What should the title of our graph be? What do you think, Melina? Birthdays. All right, that's a fine title for our graph. What do you think I should title the bottom line in months? And what should I title my side, Isabel? Number of birthdays. Now I have to fill in what's the X and the Y axis. So along the bottom, instead of starting at January, which is the beginning of the year, because I've already answered these and I know what this last question is, it says, which of the 4 seasons has the most birthdays? I'm gonna go in the order of seasons. Okay, so
Do we have to?
it's gonna make it easier. So December, January, February, those are all winter months. Then I have March, April, May, those are the spring, June, July, August, our summer, September, October, and November are our fall. That's gonna make it easier for me to answer that last question. So sometimes looking at the questions will help you set up where you're gonna put things. Then going up the side, we said number of birthdays. We know that at the line is our 0. How high up do I need to number? Gigi? I only have to go up to 3 because I only have the most in a month is 3. So I can kind of make it big spaces so I can see the difference. I don't have to draw it really tiny and go up to 20. I can space it out so I can really see if it's 1, 2, or 3, 0, 1, 2, or 3. And now you make your bars for each one. So December has 2. I'm going to make a bar that goes to the 2. You're going to do that for every month. Then you're going to answer your questions. So everybody should have your data table. You use the data table to create the graph. You have to have correct labeling. That's why we were kind of being sticklers on it with the packet. Yes. November's 3, yes. All right, so most of us are just at the point where we're making our bars. We're gonna pause so I can go over the next page with the line graph. Then we will have time to go back to it, okay? So we've got a good start on the bar graph. Let's turn our page, everybody pencils down, turn your page to the line graph. So we're pausing the bar graph. For the line graph, it is a different type of graph, so it has a different definition. A line graph is a type of graph in which points representing, oh my goodness. How do I get rid of this? Technology. Yeah. Do I just click on? There we go. In which points representing data pairs, so those coordinate pairs that we talked about when we were graphing, that's what we're doing here. So the data pairs are our coordinate pairs. They are connected by line segments. So when we look over at the graph, you can see here is our data pairs. The line segment is the connecting the 2 points together. And we're gonna use those lines to really see, to be able to answer our questions. So the line graph focuses on the value of something. Bar graphs, remember, was focusing on how many of something there is. The line graph focuses on the value of something. So there are different times you would want to use different types of graphs. So it's important to know which type of graph you want to use in which situation so you can answer your questions. Here's an example of a line graph showing Russell's, whoever that is, I don't know Russell, but this is how he grew over time, how tall he was at different years of his life. So if we look at this, when did we start measuring Russell? How old was he when we started measuring him? He was 3, because we can see the ages on the bottom, and our first ordered pair, our data pair, is at 3. How tall was he when he was 3 years old? Olivia? 2 feet. And we can see on the side, the height is in feet. Okay, because we don't want to just put 2 for our answer. 2 what? Was he 2 inches? Was he 2 meters? Was he 2 feet? So it's important that you put your measurement. He was 2 feet. It is important to put measurements so we know exactly how tall he was, not just 2. How tall was Russell at the age of 24? Nolan?
6'1".
So he's right here, and he's up here, so 6 feet. And I actually thought this one was just off the line, so I called the 21. I called 6 feet 1 inch, and I called the 24 6 feet 2 inches.
But can we call it 6'1" if we want to? Or?
On the test, if it's not clear like that, I'll accept something that's super close. Just like when we were using the protractor, if it was super close, I wouldn't accept 6 feet because it's obviously not just 6 feet. It's obviously over. I wouldn't accept 6.5 feet because it's not at the halfway mark. Okay, so it has to be less than that. Bigger than 6 feet, less than 6.5. So you have to, what?
At 15, he's like 4.5 inches.
4.5 inches?
Yeah, he's like barely.
Inches?
He's like,
Feet.
yeah,
So
he's barely like over 5 foot.
the people grow at different rates.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I went to school with people who I was always taller than. Because I went to grade school like this that went up through, mine went through 9th grade. And I was always taller than some of these people. And then when I saw them, we went to different high schools. And I saw them at like high school graduations. I hadn't seen them for 4 years. And all of a sudden they're way taller than me. People hit their growth spurts at different times. My son Mateo, when he was 12, he was already taller than me. He was already like 5'10", and I'm 5'4".
How tall is Mateo right now?
He's 6'2". So people grow at different rates. So it took a while for Russell to hit his big growth spurt, and that's normal. Some people are super tall right away, and then they don't grow anymore. Rosa was 5'4" when she was in 5th grade. She's still 5'4". Yeah. So everybody grows at different times. Between which ages did Russell grow the most? When did he have his big growth spurt? Jillian? I would pick between ages that are right next to each other. 12 to 15. When they ask questions like this, they want ages that are right next to each other. That's where we see that biggest climb. How much did Russell grow between the ages of 12 and 21? So think about what we did with that bar graph when we were looking at what kind of math do we have to do?
Wait,
Between 12 and 21.
Yeah, let's say.
Yeah, I'm aware.
So he was 3 feet when he was 12 years old. Is that funny? When we talked about people have their growth spurts at different times. So somebody who is on the shorter side most of elementary can all of a sudden be one of the tallest people. Okay, we don't pick on people or tease them about their height. James,
It'd be, 3 feet.
just 3 feet?
Oh, 3 feet, 1 inch.
3 feet, 1 inch.
You just put 3.1 and then an S.
We can't say 3.1 because when we talk about decimals, that's in the tens, and feet and inches are in 12s. So you can't use a decimal.
You can't just put it down.
Nope, you cannot do a decimal because feet and inches go by 12ths, whereas decimals go by tenths. Does that make sense? It's a different type of math that we're using. It's a whole another lesson explaining that. But when you're doing measuring with feet, you have to say feet and inches. You can't just do a decimal. Isabel? No. You have to label them. 3 what, 1 what. Okay? So you have to say 3 feet, 1 inch. If we just said 3 comma 1, that looks like an ordered pair. I wouldn't know what that means. Okay? You have to put your measurement. Those are really great questions and a really great way for us to learn about how to write things out. All right. So now it's the work time. We know we have to finish our bar graph and we have to work on a line graph. So let's see what this line graph is going to look like. So we already have our data table. So with the bar graph, we had created our data table. Now we already have our data table. And it's telling us the average highs and low temperatures from Minnesota from 1945 to 2022. So the average temperature, high temperature in January is 24, the average low temperature was 10. Right. We need to create a graph that's going to represent this, a line graph. Now, we have highs and we have lows. So that means we have to create 2 line graphs. 1 line for the highs, 1 line for the lows. So we're going to have 2 different types of 2 line graphs on here. First thing we do is we draw it. And we have to do our correct labeling. What should a title of our graph be? What do you think, Aiden?
Pictures?
And I would take it a little bit further and say temperatures in Minnesota. You know, narrow it down a little bit. What would be on the bottom?
Like the date.
What do we call these?
Month.
Months. And what is going to be on our side, on that y-axis, Jamesy?
But like, do I say degrees?
You could just say highs and lows. Or, you know what, degrees would work too. Degrees would work. You could, yeah. I like degrees. Then when you're gonna have to fill in your months, fill in the degrees, think about what you're gonna start at. I skip counted because I couldn't go from the lowest to the highest. I couldn't do that by ones. I did not have enough space. So don't go by ones. What do you think would be a good way to skip count it? Gigi? That's exactly what I did. I skipped by 5s. Skipping by 2, we wouldn't have enough room. Skipping by 10, it's gonna be too close together. Skipping by 5s, you'll be able to see the differences in the temperatures a whole lot easier. So label your months across the bottom, skip by 5s going up. I did my highs first. I graphed them, plotted where the lines are. You connect those dots to make the line segment. Then I did my low line, all the lows. It's not going to be a straight line, right? Because we're connecting line segments. And then I answered the questions from my graph. You could look at the table, you could look at the graph to help you answer the questions. So you are going to have two different line graphs here on the same graph, so we can compare and see the difference. Does that make sense?
Wait, so do we like, for January, do you do like label 24 and then 10?
So what I did, I had January, I had February, like that. I did all of my highs. So I had skip counted up, let's say it's here. I did my highs, and I figured out what that looked like. I connected it. I labeled it the highs. Then I went back and I did my lows. Because the highs are going to be higher than my lows, right? Highs are going to be big numbers, lows are going to be the smaller numbers. Then you connect that and you label it your low line. But you do it for all the months. So do just the highs first, then do just the lows. If you're doing both the high and the low, you're going to get confused as to which dots to connect. So do just the highs, connect your dots, then do just the lows and connect your dots. So we don't accidentally go in back and forth between the highs and the lows. Any other questions? For my friends at home, you can, we hope you are well and we hope you have a wonderful day. We hope to see you soon.